Back friends, welcome to the operating system tutorial. So in this session we are going to learn about the threading issues. In particular we are going to cover certain topics like the fork and execute system calls, how they've been associated with the threading, and we are going to see the cancellation of a thread, and we are going to see the signal handling between the threads, and we are also going to learn about the thread pools. So friends, let us try to understand these sub-concepts in the threading issues. The first sub-concept is the understanding the fork and execute system calls. The first sub-concept is understanding the fork and execute system calls. Right. So friends, the fork is a system call. Fork is a system call, or simple, fork is an operation, assume like that, is an operation which creates a new thread. A fork is an operation which creates a new thread, something like similar to the creating a process. And whereas EXEC or the execution system call is one which executes a thread. So fork is a system call which creates a new thread, and execute system call which creates which executes the thread. Right. Now let us try to understand the similarity between the process creation and the thread creation. See, in the process creation we are also applying the fork system call, but even though the concept is same, but in the semantic wise, so in the grammar wise, or in the explicitly mentioning wise, the semantics of fork and execute system call change in a multi-threaded program. So unlike the conventional process creation, the process execution, here the fork and execute system calls change in respect to the semantics, particularly in the multi-threaded program. Now try to understand the fork system call. See, the fork means creating a new thread. Right. And we have two versions of Unix. We have different versions of Unix, but anyway, most of these Unix operating systems, they have been using two versions of using the fork system call. Try to understand that. It is a little bit simple, but try to understand that. See, the first version is something like if any thread calls the fork system call, then it has two chances. The first chance is, it is going to do two activities, either this or that depends on the version of the Unix. Right, let us try to it. What is the first kind? That means duplicate a new thread will be created, and it is going to be a duplicate thread to the parent thread. A new thread will be created, and it is a duplicate thread to the parent thread. And there is another version that using the fork system call that duplicates only one thread that invokes the fork system call. Right? That means in some versions of Unix, if fork system call has been triggered, then that system call will try to create a copy of all the threads which are executing right now. Right. So let us try to understand again. In certain versions of Unix, if the fork system call has been triggered, then that fork system call will try to create a copy of all the threads which are executing right now. In some versions of Unix, if the fork system call has been triggered, then only the duplicate thread, that means only single thread, only the duplicate thread which has been invoked by the parent thread will be created. So instead of creating all the copy of the threads, in some version only one thread, means the duplicate thread for the parent thread will be created. Now we have to understand which one is, we have two variations right now. Now we don't know which version or which variation is going to be implemented. Let us try to understand. along with the fork system call, we have another system call that is called the execute. Correct or not? So execute is a system call. Execute is a system call which tries to execute the thread or which tries to replace the entire process. Right. Now, if you understand that, if the first step is we have a program, assume like that, and the first step is the fork system call. Okay, right. So that means the duplicate thread has been created. Second step. The second step is the calling the executable or execute system call. Now what happens? Since the execute system call is going to execute the entire process, or it is going to execute all the threads, so automatically this execute should be since it is executing all the processes, therefore here in this scenario, if the execute system call is just after the fork, then the fork system call should create all the duplicate processes, right? And we have another scenario that if there is no execute immediately after the fork, then only the parent or only the parent process can create only a single duplicate thread. Let us try to understand again. See, we have two versions, correct or not? We have two versions of fork system call. That depends upon the application. If execute system call is immediately after the fork or immediately after the forking, then duplicating all the threads is unnecessary, because as the program specified in the parameters to execute will replace the entire process, correct? But in this instance, duplicating only the calling thread is appropriate. If, however, the separate process does not call the execute system call after forking, right, then the separate process should duplicate all the threads. So the concept is very simple, right? We'll try to understand that we have two system calls. One is the fork, second one is the executable system call, right? If executable system call is triggered immediately after the fork system call, then duplicating all the threads is unnecessary, because the execute system call itself is taking that job. And we have another instance that duplicating only one calling thread is appropriate. If, however, the separate process does not call the execute after forking, what happens? The separate process should be duplicating all the threads. That means if the execute system call is not immediately after the fork command, then the fork command itself will try to create duplication of all the threads, okay, when there is no immediate executable system call. Let us try to understand the cancellation of a thread. Friends, thread cancellation is a task of terminating a thread before it has been completed, correct or not? So thread cancellation means it is not something like it is going to be it is not something like a termination, because thread cancellation means it is something like an abnormal closure of a thread. That means thread cancellation is the task of terminating a thread before it has been completed. And for example, you can see this, for example, if multiple threads are concurrently searching through a database and one thread returns the result, the remaining threads might be cancelled, correct or not? You have a database and you have created certain kinds of threads, certain number of threads, and these threads are going to search for the database. They are searching for a particular element in the database. If any one of the thread has found a result, then the remaining threads jobs is inappropriate and you can cancel, you can terminate those jobs, right? Of course, we should not terminate, rather we should cancel the jobs. And we have another situation, something like when a user presses a button on a web browser, correct? So you have a web browser running, whether it is Google Chrome or Opera or Mozilla Firefox, etc. So when a user presses a button on a web browser, that stops a web page from loading further, then the web page loaded using several threads. See, you have a web browser and certain application has been associated with that web browser, and sometimes user click the button that cancel. Even if you remember, if you try to go for the payment gateways, then you might be getting some information like please don't cancel, or please don't press any back, or please don't refresh, etc., since it is going for the payment, right? So if at all, if you forcefully close the window, or if you forcefully click the cancel button, what happens? That means you are terminating that particular thread. No, you are canceling that particular thread, because that thread is doing some activity since it is not being completed, but still you wish to cancel that thread. This is another kind of example, right? So a thread is to be cancelled is often referred as the target thread, right? So what do you mean by target thread? Target thread means a thread that is to be cancelled is often referred as the target thread. And cancellation of a thread may be occur in two different scenarios. So if you're going to cancel a thread, you have two different scenarios. The first scenario is the asynchronous cancellation, and the second scenario is the deferred cancellation. The first scenario is the asynchronous cancellation, and the second scenario is the deferred, DEFERRED, deferred cancellation. So let us try to understand these two cancellations. In the asynchronous cancellation, what does it mean? It's very simple. One thread immediately terminates the target thread, that is straight away. So you have two threads, and one thread is immediately terminating the target thread. So you have two threads, one thread is running and second thread is referred as the target thread. Simple. So in the asynchronous cancellation, the target thread is immediately closed or immediately terminated by the working thread or another thread. But when you go for the deferred cancellation, what happens? The target thread periodically checks. The target thread periodically checks whether it should terminate. So in the deferred cancellation, the target thread itself is checking whether I should terminate myself or not. Itself is checking periodically that I should terminate. So allowing it an opportunity to terminate itself in an orderly fashion. See, if some other thread is going to terminate you, then you call it as asynchronous. No, if the thread itself is trying to terminate, then you call it as the deferred cancellation. How it is going to terminate itself? It simply checks periodically for every 5 seconds or 5 milliseconds or 2 milliseconds whether my job is not intended or my job is not going to use for the user. It is trying to check for that, and if it found that it should be closed, then at a particular orderly fashion that thread will be terminated by itself. This is called the deferred cancellation. So what does that mean? In the asynchronous cancellation, another thread will cancel the target thread. In the deferred cancellation, the target thread itself will cancel the process or the thread. The difficulty with the cancellation occurs in situations where resources have been allocated to a cancelled thread, or where a thread is cancelled while in the middle of the updating the data, or it is working with the shared data. That is the basic concern, because if your thread is allocated with some kind of resources, no issue. Okay, if the thread is allocated with some kind of resources, of course, if you try to cancel, if you try to go for terminating a thread abruptly, then of course you can get back the allocated resources. But what happens when the thread is executing on a shared environment, or what happens when the thread is executing in a shared data? So that means, since it is working with some kind of updating a shared data, that will leave a big issue that is called the race condition. We'll try to understand this concept in the next coming sessions. Anyway, let us try to understand this issue or this process, this problem a little bit more. See, we have a database. Assume like that, and there is a variable something called x, right? There is a variable something called x, and there is another variable something called y. So you have values x equal to 5 and y equal to 6. You have two values x equal to 5 and y equal to 6, and you have a thread, okay, and that thread is going to modify the value for x as 10 and y as 20, okay, and that thread is going to modify the value x as 10 and y as 20. At the same time, another thread is also trying to modify these x and y values, and another thread is trying to make the x value as 15 and y value as 30. Assume like that. So if both threads are trying to modify, and in between, if one of the thread has been cancelled or one of the thread has been terminated abruptly by another thread, then the partial updations in the database will reflect a big conflict. So that is why there is a biggest concern when you are trying to terminate a thread or when you try to cancel a thread abruptly. Then if the thread is working on a shared database or shared data, then it might leave some database, or it might leave a big conflict. Such conflicts are to be synchronized. To avoid inconsistencies. Right. Now let us try to recall what are the two cancellation methods we have. One is the asynchronous, second one is the deferred cancellation, right? So in the asynchronous cancellation, the target thread has been cancelled by another thread, right? So the target thread is being cancelled abruptly without any checking. So asynchronous cancellation will leave a big issue, whereas the deferred cancellation, since it has some orderly fashion, then we can check whether the thread is been working with some kind of the shared data. Of course, if it is working on the shared data, we should not cancel it immediately. Rather, we should give some time to deal with that issue. Okay, and the thread can, and certain cases we can put some kind of cancellation points. And for the deferred cancellation, we can put some kind of cancellation points. And these cancellation points are something like a time durations where the thread will check, okay, whether I can cancel right now. I should wait for some more time, since the shared data should be in consistent formats. So the thread can perform this cancellation check at a particular point in which it can cancel safely. And we have to remember that the P threads, the POSIX P threads, refers to such cancellation points. Friends, let us try to understand the next sub-concept, that is called the signal handling. So we are going to learn about the signal handling, right? So what do you mean by signal? A signal is used in Unix systems to notify a process that a particular event has been triggered or occurred. So signal means if any event has been occurred, the notification is called a signal, right? So that means signal is a notification indicating that a particular event has been triggered or occurred. See, a signal may be received either synchronously or asynchronously. A signal may be received either synchronously or asynchronously. That means depending upon the source of and the reason for the event being signaled, right? So that means the signal may be triggered either synchronously or asynchronously. That depends upon the source and that depends upon the requirement in which the current application is executing. So all signals whether synchronous or asynchronous, follow these kind of patterns. So whether you follow synchronous or asynchronous, but all the signals are going to follow these three kinds of patterns. So what is the first pattern? A signal is generated by the occurrence of a particular event, as we have seen the same thing in the definition. So signal means any signal is generated by the occurrence of a particular event, right? A generated signal is delivered to a process. So who is going to take the signal? So a generated signal is going to be received by the process or is going to be delivered to a process, right? So once delivered, the signal must be handled. So for every signal trigger, that signal should be handled appropriately. So these are the three things which we should keep in our mind when a signal has been triggered. What is the first thing? What is the first pattern? A signal will be generated for every event which has been triggered or occurred. What is the second pattern? A generated signal is delivered to a process or a generated signal will be received by a process. And what is the third pattern? Once the signal has been delivered to any process, that signal should be handled appropriately. So these are the three patterns for every signal which has been triggered, right? Whether the signal might be synchronous or asynchronous. So these are the three patterns which we need to observe in any operating system. And so examples of synchronous signals include illegal memory access and division by zero. So that means, so for example, in your program, you're going to access a particular memory location. Assume like that. So you're going to access a particular memory location, but at present the memory location is not being assigned to the particular process, but a currently executing process. So that means it is going its limits. Then automatically the operating system or will trigger a particular kind of a signal which is called a illegal memory access. It is a kind of a synchronous signal. Also in your program, if you try to divide a particular number with 0, so any number if it is divided by 0 will always leads to an infinite value, correct or not? So it is another kind of notification generated from our program, and it is another kind of signal notified from our program. And these are the two kinds, these are the two synchronous signals normally we observe in our regular programs, right? So if a running program performs either of these actions, a signal will be generated. Normally we see these kind of signals as exceptions in our program. Anyway, in the operating system language, we call them as a signal. So whether you're working with the illegal memory access, or you're working with array index out of bounds, or you're working with division by 0, or you're working with file not found, so all these are coming in the synchronous signal category, right? So any kind of synchronous signal should be handled whether by the user or by the operating system. So synchronous signals are delivered to the same process, correct or not? See, in your program you got an error that divide by 0 has been encountered. Now the process which has been triggered that signal has to perform an operation to handle or to avoid that kind of notification. I think you got my point. So some notification has been triggered, so we have to handle that notification, what exactly the root cause is, how it is going to be handled. So the process has to take care of that trigger, right? Friends, recall our C language program or C++ or Java program. In our programs, we try to write down the exception handling. What exactly the exception handling is doing? Some exception is encountered and we are going to write, we have already been assigned some exception handling mechanism in our program such that those exceptions can be avoided or can be minimized, correct or not? In a same way, the signals which are being generated, in the while executing the user process, they can be handled. Right? So recall your C program and Java program, right? So there are certain predefined or built-in exceptions. Correct? So using the built-in handler, you can handle those exceptions, or you can write, or a user can write his own user-defined exceptions. I think you got my point, right? So in the C language or Java language, we have built-in exception handling. At the same time, we have user-defined exception handling. Similar to that, in the operating system domain, a signal may be handled in one of the two possible handlers. The first one is the default handler, that means the default signal handler, or the second one is a user-defined signal handler. If you try to remember our C language or Java language exception handling, then it is very easy to apply the same synergy or apply the same analogy here. So any signal can be handled by the default signal handler, or a user can separately define his own signal handler. Friends, let us try to understand the concept thread pools. So recall that web browser, recall the client server architecture, where when you apply the multi-threading in the client server architecture, so whenever a request has been triggered from the user or from the client, a separate thread can be assigned for each request to handle the response. Correct or not? So whenever any request has been created from the client, each request can be assigned to a particular thread, such that the performance of the application or the performance of the system can be improved much further. However, if the number of threads are rapidly increasing, assume that the system is keep on increasing the number of threads continuously or rapidly, then the system resources are going to be exhausted within no time. Correct or not? So whenever the number of threads or the count of threads are rapidly increasing, then the system resources are going to be exhausted within no time. The possible solution is that instead of rapidly increasing the number of threads, we need to create a separate pool, pool, a separate bunch of threads, that is called the thread pool. So this is the simplest solution. Unlimited threads could exhaust system resources such as CPU time or memory. One solution to this problem is to use a thread pool. So what do you mean by a pool? So the general idea behind a thread pool is to create a number of threads at a process startup and place them into a pool where they sit and wait for the work. See, these threads have been created in the initial phase only, but they are not being executed until unless any requirement has been generated or triggered. So that means thread pool is a collection of threads in which all the threads are sitting and waiting for any event to be occurred or any request which are coming from the outside. So initially in the pool, all the threads are sitting and waiting for any request. If any request has been assigned from the external thing or any external event has been requested for a thread to be executed, then the thread from the pool will be handled to that particular request. So what is the basic advantage of this thread pool? We have two important benefits from the thread pool. The first advantage is servicing a request within an existing thread is usually faster than waiting to create a thread. So what does it mean? So if you are trying to service a request within an existing thread, is usually faster than waiting to create a thread. And coming to the second advantage, a thread pool limits the number of threads that exist at any one point. So that means instead of creating number of threads rapidly or increasing the number of threads rapidly, the thread pool has a feature to restrict the number of threads which are to be existed. This is particularly important on systems that cannot support a large number of concurrent threads. So such kind of facility always helps in such systems which cannot support a large number of concurrent threads. Now we may put a question. So what could be the maximum number of the threads in a thread pool should exist? So that depends upon the operating system. At the same time, that depends upon the resources, and that depends upon so many factors within the operating system environment. And Windows 32 API supports functions to incorporate thread pools. So in the Windows 32 or Windows environment, the thread pool API is similar to creating a thread using the create thread function. At the same time, it is going to use a separate function, or it is going to use a separate function library for handling with the pool activities. Apart from Windows environment, the Java or the java.util.current package, concurrent package in Java 1.5 or the later versions also provide a thread pool utility which can handle the thread pool, or which can handle the existence of or the execution of various threads according to the environment conditions. So that's all, friends. In the today's session we have learnt about the threading issues. Particularly we have learnt about the fork and execution system calls, and after that we have learnt about the termination or abnormal termination or the cancellation of any thread, and after that we have learnt about the signal which are being triggered with any association with any of event, and later we have learnt about that thread pool is going to be much benefited instead of going for a isolated or instead of going for a conventional way of creating a thread. So that's all, friends. Today I hope you have understand the session. We'll meet again soon. Have a nice day. Bye.